Imagine the unthinkable. A ghost at her own wake. The chilling true story you won't believe. Picture this. A funeral service is drawing to a close. Mourners, faces etched with grief, offer condolences to a devastated husband weeping for his beloved wife, tragically lost in an accident far from home. But as the last well-wishers depart, a figure emerges from the shadows, walking steadily towards the grieving widower. It's her, the woman they were just mourning. Alive, breathing, staring directly at the man who paid to have her killed. This isn't fiction. This is the astonishing true story of Noella Rukundo. Before we delve into this incredible tale of betrayal and survival, if you find stories like this compelling, make sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing to channels that bring you amazing true stories. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an update. From Burundi dreams to Australian shores. Noella Rukundo's life was a testament to resilience long before she faced death head-on. Her journey began in Burundi, a nation scarred by conflict. Her early life was marked by hardship, culminating in the loss of her first husband, leaving her a young widow with 5 children to raise. Burundi offered little hope for the future she desperately wanted for her family. With unimaginable courage, Noella gathered her children and her dreams, leaving behind everything she knew in 2004 to seek refuge and a new beginning in Australia. The transition was daunting. A new language, a new culture, and the overwhelming sense of being adrift in a foreign land. Yet Australia offered a lifeline. With the crucial support of a resettlement agency, Noella began to piece together a new life. She found work, secured a modest home, and watched her children slowly adapt, their laughter gradually replacing the anxieties of their past. The Australian community, by and large, was welcoming, offering assistance and a sense of belonging she hadn't dared hope for. Gratitude filled Noella's heart. Life, though challenging, was finally looking brighter. It was during one of her visits to the resettlement agency that fate intervened again and again. She met Balanga Kalala, a fellow refugee who had recently arrived from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Kalala, fluent in English, was often asked by the social workers to act as a translator for Noella, who primarily spoke Swahili at the time. Through shared experiences of loss, displacement, and the struggle to rebuild, a connection formed. Kalala's story mirrored Noella's own in its tragedy. He too was a widower, having fled Congo after a brutal rebel attack on his village claimed the lives of his wife and young son. He arrived in Australia seeking solace and a chance to escape the ghosts of his past. Noella, initially hesitant to open her heart again after the loss of her first husband, found herself drawn to Kalala's charm and kindness. He made her laugh, treated her 5 children as his own, and seemed to understand the depths of her past sorrows. He accepted her, burdens and all. Against her initial intentions, Noella fell deeply in love. They decided to build a life together, moving into a home in the Melbourne suburb of Kings Park. Their family grew, with Noella bearing Kalala 3 more children, blending their families into a bustling household of 8 kids. Kalala proved to be a diligent provider. Having arrived as a refugee in 2004, he worked tirelessly, first in a seafood processing factory, then securing a better-paying job as a forklift operator in a warehouse. On the surface, they were living the refugee's success story. A stable home, a blended family, financial security. However, beneath the surface of domestic stability, a darker side of Kalala began to emerge. Pressures of work and life seemed to ignite a volatile temper within him. When tired or stressed, he would erupt in anger over minor issues. Shouting escalated. Then came the physical violence. Noella found herself trapped in a terrifying cycle. Explosions of rage, sometimes resulting in physical harm, followed by periods of intense remorse. Kalala would weep, beg for forgiveness, blaming his outbursts on the trauma he had endured back in Congo. Torn between the man she loved, the charming, supportive partner, and the man who terrified her, Noella often chose forgiveness. She clung to the good times, rationalized the bad, and accepted the situation, partly out of love, partly out of a desire to keep her large family intact, and perhaps partly because the cycle of abuse can be so insidiously difficult to break. She loved him, and she believed his apologies were sincere, hoping each time would be the last. A fateful journey home. Despite the thousands of miles separating her from Burundi, Noella maintained connections with her family, particularly the stepmother who had raised her. Modern technology bridged the distance, keeping her updated on news from her homeland. Then, one day, the news was devastating. Her stepmother was gravely ill and had passed away. Grief-stricken, Noella knew she had to return to Burundi to pay her final respects and attend the funeral. It was a long, expensive journey, 7,500 miles from Melbourne, but it was necessary. Kalala, citing work responsibilities, couldn't accompany her. He seemed supportive, concerned, promising to check in frequently. Arriving in Bujumbura, Burundi's capital, Noella felt the weight of her sorrow compounded by exhaustion, stress of the long journey. Her family home was small, so she checked into the Hotel Tanganyika on Lake Tanganyika's shores, seeking a quiet space to grieve and rest. The funeral was emotionally draining, a final farewell to the woman who had shaped her childhood. Returning to her hotel room afterward, overwhelmed and missing her husband and children intensely, she longed for the comfort of home. Just as she was about to collapse into bed, her phone rang. It was Kalala. His voice, laced with concern, was a balm to her frayed nerves. He said he'd been trying to reach her all day, asking how she was coping. Noella confessed her exhaustion and sadness, telling him she was heading to bed. But instead of wishing her good night, Kalala made an odd suggestion. Why don't you step outside for some fresh air first? It might help clear your head. He sounded so genuinely worried about her well-being, wanting to appease his concern, and perhaps needing the air herself. Noella agreed. She pushed herself out of the room and walked toward the hotel exit, completely unaware that she was walking into a meticulously planned trap, orchestrated by the very man whose comforting voice still echoed in her ear. The ambush. Noella had barely stepped outside the hotel compound, the cool night air a stark contrast to the stuffy room, when she saw him, a man purposefully approaching her. Before she could process his intent, the glint of metal caught her eye. A gun was pointed directly at her face. Time seemed to freeze. The man's voice was low, menacing. "Don't scream," he hissed. "If you start screaming, I will shoot you. They'll catch me, but you will already be dead." Terror seized her, cold and paralyzing. Her instinct was to scream, to run, but the cold finality in his voice, the unwavering aim of the gun, told her that compliance was her only chance. Her heart hammered against her ribs, threatening to burst, but she forced herself to remain silent, nodding mutely. The gunman motioned her toward a waiting car parked discreetly down the street. 2 other men were inside, a driver and another armed assailant. She was bundled into the back seat, sandwiched between the 2 gunmen, their presence radiating menace. A rough blindfold was pulled over her eyes, plunging her into darkness and amplifying her fear. The car sped off. Noella estimated they drove for about 30 to 40 minutes, the silence in the car thick with unspoken violence. Where were they taking her? Why was this happening? Her mind raced, searching for an enemy, a reason, but finding none. When the car finally lurched to a stop, she was roughly pulled out and shoved into what felt like a dilapidated, empty building. Inside, the damp, musty air filled her nostrils. She was forced onto a chair, her hands quickly bound behind her. Still reeling, trying to make sense of the nightmare, she heard one of the kidnappers make a phone call. "We have her," he ordered curtly. Then, they turned their attention to her, their faces grim in the dim light filtering through grimy windows. "What did you do to this man?" one of them demanded, his voice rough. "Why has this man asked us to kill you?" Fusion warred with terror. "Which man?" Noella stammered, her voice trembling. "I haven't done anything wrong. I don't have problems with anyone." The kidnapper stared at her, a look of almost pity mixed with contempt. Then he delivered the blow that shattered her world. "Your husband," he stated flatly. "Your husband paid us to kill you. The unveiling of pure evil." "No, impossible!" A scream tore from Noella's throat, raw with disbelief and anguish. "You're lying! Kalala would never! He loves me!" She felt a sharp sting across her face as one of the men slapped her hard. "You stupid woman," the leader of the group sneered. He seemed almost exasperated by her naivety. To prove his point, he redialed the number of the man who had hired them. He put the phone on loudspeaker, holding it close enough for Noella to hear. Her blood ran cold. The voice on the other end was unmistakable. It was Kalala, the same voice that had feigned concern just an hour before, urging her to step outside. Same voice that had whispered words of love for 11 years. Same voice that belonged to the father of her 3 youngest children. Now that voice was calmly, coldly discussing the details of her murder and the disposal of her body with the men holding her captive. "Kill her," Kalala instructed, his tone chillingly detached. Betrayal was absolute, a physical blow that knocked the air from her lungs. The man she had trusted, forgiven, and loved unconditionally had condemned her to death. The world spun, darkness encroaching on her vision. As the kidnappers discussed methods, the horror became too much. Noella lost consciousness, an unlikely reprieve. When she came to, slumped in the chair, the initial shock gave way to a chilling despair. This was it. There was no escape. Her husband wanted her dead. She began to mentally prepare herself, thinking of her children, praying for their future. But as she looked up, she noticed the kidnappers observing her, their expressions unreadable. Then the leader spoke again, his tone unexpectedly different. "We're not going to kill you." Noella stared, uncomprehending. Was this another cruel trick? "We don't kill women and children," he continued, almost matter-of-factly. He explained their twisted code of ethics. They were killers for hire, yes, but they drew a line. He then posed a question that echoed Noella's own dawning horror. How could she not have known? He revealed that Kalala had first contracted them back in November of the previous year. The plan had been in motion for months, long before her stepmother's death provided the perfect opportunity. Noella searched her memory, desperately trying to recall any sign, any warning, any hint of the monstrous betrayal lurking beneath her husband's loving facade. Had his jealousy, his occasional anger, hinted at this depth of darkness? Try as she might, she couldn't pinpoint a moment that foretold such an evil plot. A fragile flicker of hope ignited within her. These men, these hired assassins, were paradoxically her saviors. They might be criminals, but their refusal to kill her felt like divine intervention. For the next 2 agonizing days, Noella remained captive in the derelict building. During this time, her kidnappers played a double game. They contacted Kalala, confirming that the job was done. Noella was dead. They then proceeded to extort more money from him, claiming unforeseen complications and expenses. Kalala, believing his wife was gone, readily wired the additional funds via Western Union, sealing his guilt. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, Noella's brother grew frantic. She hadn't checked out, hadn't told him her return flight details, and her belongings were still in her room. Fearing the worst, he contacted Kalala in Melbourne. Kalala played the part of the concerned husband perfectly, even sending Noella's brother $545, supposedly to bribe local police into investigating her disappearance, all while knowing exactly where she was, or rather where he thought her body lay. Finally, after 2 days that felt like an eternity, the kidnappers told Noella she was free to go. But their release came with a chilling warning and a piece of crucial advice. "You are extremely lucky," the leader told her sternly. "Your husband is serious. He wants you dead. We don't know if he has hired others. You need to be careful." They gave her a strict deadline: leave Burundi within 80 hours. Before abandoning her on a dark roadside, they handed her a small vital package, a memory card containing recordings of all their phone conversations with Kalala, including the kill order and subsequent financial transactions. They also gave her the Western Union receipts for the money Kalala had sent. Their final words were a harsh indictment. "We want you to go back and tell other stupid women like you what happened. You people get a chance to go overseas for a better life, but the money you earn, the money the government gives you, you use it for killing each other." The resurrection. Alone in the dead of night, miles from safety, Noella knew she had no time to waste. Her first instinct was to call someone she trusted implicitly back in Melbourne. Das Nemi, the pastor of her church. The pastor answered, expecting perhaps news about funeral arrangements. Instead, he heard Noella's voice, alive and trembling. The pastor was stunned into silence. Kalala had already informed the community of Noella's tragic accident. Hearing her recount the horrifying tale of abduction and betrayal, the pastor initially struggled to believe it. But Noella's terror was palpable, the details too specific, too nightmarish to be fabricated. Convinced, the pastor agreed to help, promising absolute secrecy. Noella was adamant. No one, especially not her children, could know she was alive. She had been given a second chance, and she intended to use it to expose her husband's monstrous act. The thought of seeing Kalala's face when he saw her alive became her driving force. While Noella secretly made her way back to Australia, coordinating her return with Pastor Nemi, Kalala was busy playing the role of the grieving widower in Melbourne. He had masterfully spun a tale of a terrible accident, collecting sympathy and donations from their shocked community. He wept, he mourned, he accepted condolences, all while harboring the dark secret of his murderous plot. On February 22, 2015, Noella landed back in Melbourne, a ghost returning to the land of the living. Staying hidden, she learned that Kalala was hosting the final day of her funeral rites at their home that very evening. The irony was staggering. She was going to attend her own funeral. As evening descended, Noella waited patiently in a car parked down the street, watching her home from a distance. Pastor Nemi was nearby for support. Around 7:30 p.m., she saw the last of the mourners leaving, Kalala escorting them to their cars, his face a mask of sorrow. As the final car drove away, leaving Kalala standing alone on the porch under the dim light, Noella knew it was time. She got out of the car and began walking toward him, her steps steady, her gaze fixed. Even in the twilight, she saw the exact moment he recognized her. His jaw dropped. His eyes widened in sheer terror, disbelief warring with fear. He stumbled back, muttering incoherently, "Is it a ghost? Is it me?" It was as if he was seeing an apparition risen from the grave. Noella said nothing, simply continued walking toward him, letting the reality of her presence sink in. He reached out a trembling hand, touching her shoulder as if to confirm she was real. He jumped back, then reached out again. The contact, the solid feel of her, broke the spell of disbelief. It wasn't a ghost. It was Noella. Alive. Kalala collapsed, screaming, crying, begging for forgiveness, clutching at her legs. "Forgive me! Forgive me!" But the woman standing before him was not the same one who had forgiven his past abuses. The love she had felt was extinguished, replaced by the cold, hard reality of his betrayal. The line had not just been crossed, it had been obliterated. This time, there would be no forgiveness. Justice and the long road ahead. Noella calmly stepped away from her groveling husband and made the call she had arranged beforehand. Police, briefed and waiting nearby, arrived swiftly. They ordered a shaken Kalala off the premises and took Noella's initial statement. A few days later, armed with a court order against him, the next phase of her plan unfolded. Following police instructions, Noella called Kalala. The call was recorded. Believing he was perhaps talking his way back into her life, Kalala poured out a confession, laced with pathetic excuses. He claimed overwhelming jealousy, a paranoid fear that she would leave him for another man, fueled his actions. He spoke of loving her too much, of the devil making him do it. He admitted everything, hiring the killers, the payments, the motive. He had no idea his every word was being captured, sealing his fate. When brought in for official questioning, Kalala initially denied everything, attempting to maintain his facade of innocence. He insisted he was incapable of such an act. But the police had the ace up their sleeve. They played the recording. Hearing his own voice detailing the murder plot, the instructions to kill her, the pathetic justifications, there was no escape. Kalala broke down, weeping uncontrollably. The real motive remained murky, hidden beneath layers of lies and self-pity. Was it jealousy, control, financial gain, or simply the act of a man consumed by darkness? All Kalala could offer was the feeble excuse. Sometimes the devil can come into someone to do something. After they do it, they start thinking, why did I do that thing? On December 11th, 2015, Balanga Kalala pleaded guilty to incitement to murder in a Melbourne court. His guilty plea likely resulted in a more lenient sentence than he might otherwise have received. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison. For Noella, Kalala's imprisonment was not the end of her ordeal. The trauma lingered. Sleep offered little respite, often disturbed by nightmares, hearing Kalala's voice giving the order, "Kill her." The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound than life, leaving scars on her soul that might never fully fade. Adding insult to injury, some within Melbourne's African community ostracized her. They couldn't reconcile the friendly, hardworking Kalala they knew with the monster depicted in court. Some whispered that Noella must have done something to provoke him, siding with the perpetrator over the victim, a sadly common reaction in cases of domestic abuse and violence. Despite the lingering trauma and the societal judgment, Noella Rukundo stood tall. She had faced death and survived. She had exposed a monster hiding in plain sight. Now, her focus was clear. Her 8 children. They were her reason to keep going, to rebuild, to find strength she never knew she possessed. When asked about those who blamed her or doubted her story, Noella's resolve was unwavering. "My situation, my past life, that is gone," she declared. "I'm starting a new life now." Her journey was far from over. But she was no longer just a victim. She was a survivor, determined to forge a future for herself and her children, free from the shadow of the man who tried and failed to extinguish her light. What do you think of Noella's incredible story of survival and courage? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story impactful, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more true accounts of resilience and human spirit.